Sarah and Rook quickly made their way outside, their eyes squinting against the harsh light. In the distance, the dark silhouette of a massive ship loomed on the horizon. It was large, larger than anything they had seen before, and trailing behind it was a swarm of smaller ships, all of them descending rapidly. "They found us," Sarah said, her voice full of both hope and dread. "But is it the Outcasts, or something worse?" Rook's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but we need to be ready for anything. We can't afford to waste time." The survivors scattered, preparing their defenses. But deep in their hearts, they all feared the same thing, that the help they had called for would be met with a force they were not prepared for. As the ships drew closer, the dark clouds above began to swirl, and the rumbling grew deafening. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse, as if the planet itself was warning them. Sarah stood tall, her gaze fixed on the incoming ships. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing. This was the moment that would define them. They had fought, they had survived, and now they would face whatever came next, together. "Prepare yourselves," she ordered, her voice steady. "Whatever happens next, we stand as one." The survivors, humans and aliens alike, lined up, ready for whatever fate had in store for them. The galaxy had turned its back on them, but now, with the Outcasts and unknown forces arriving, they would show the universe just how far they were willing to go to survive. The call had been made. The response was here. And now, they would see if the universe had underestimated humanity, the unexpected allies. The once distant rumble had now become a deafening roar as the massive ships descended from the sky. They seemed to defy all laws of nature, cutting through the thick clouds with precision. The survivors watched, their hearts racing. Each ship, with its sleek metallic surface and ominous hum, cast a long shadow over the shelter, and with it came a wave of unease. They weren't sure who was inside, but they could feel it. This was no mere rescue mission. "Stay alert," Sarah ordered, her voice firm. She paced back and forth, scanning the horizon. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. They had been abandoned by most of the galaxy, left to fend for themselves. But now, it seemed they were about to be thrown into something far bigger than they could have imagined. The Outcasts were the ones they had relied on, humans who had been exiled, often for reasons they didn't fully understand. They had been the only ones willing to offer help, knowing the risks involved. But the ships arriving were not their own. They were too large, too advanced. Rook stood beside Sarah, his eyes narrowed as he studied the approaching fleet. He was certain the Outcasts were among them, but there was something else. Something hidden within the shadows of the fleet. "Something doesn't feel right," he muttered under his breath. "Do you think it's an ambush?" Sarah asked. Rook shook his head. "I don't know, but we've learned never to trust appearances. We need to be ready for anything." The ships continued their descent, slowing as they neared the planet's surface. For a brief moment, there was complete silence. Then, the ground beneath their feet trembled once more as the ships made contact, their engines hissing like steam escaping a boiling kettle. One of the largest ships began to open, revealing a ramp that extended down to the surface. From within, figures emerged, their silhouettes just visible against the harsh light of the descending sun. At first, Sarah thought it was just another group of humans, their faces obscured by dark, bulky suits. But as they came closer, she saw the unmistakable features of other species, beings from far-off planets, many of whom had been marginalized or cast aside by their own kind. The Outcasts. But these were not the same outcasts they had hoped for. These individuals were unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Their features were alien, twisted in ways that were both horrifying and mesmerizing. Some had multiple limbs, others had eyes that glowed with unnatural light. They weren't what Sarah had expected. They were something more. As the figures neared, Sarah's heartbeat quickened. There was no fear in their eyes, no sign of hesitation. They were warriors, legendary in their own right. The Deathworlders had arrived. At the front of the group stood a tall, imposing figure, a human. His armor was scratched and scarred, proof of the countless battles he had fought. He exuded an air of authority, but there was something else there too, something that made Sarah's blood run cold. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a legend. "Sarah," Rook whispered, barely audible. "That's Cade." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. Cade. The name was famous across the galaxy. He had been a part of humanity's most elite fighting forces, known for his ruthless tactics and unrelenting drive. He was a leader, a symbol of what humanity had become after everything had fallen apart. "Is he here to help us?" Sarah asked, a lump forming in her throat. Rook didn't answer immediately. He simply watched Cade with a mixture of respect and fear. "I hope so," he said quietly, "but be prepared for anything." Cade's reputation isn't just for his strength. He's also known for making hard decisions. As Cade and his team reached the survivors, they stopped just a few paces away. There was a tense silence, broken only by the distant hum of the ships. "You called for help." Cade's voice was deep, his tone calm but cold. "And we've come." Sarah nodded, stepping forward. "We've been abandoned." "The galaxy." "The galaxy doesn't matter," Cade interrupted, his gaze piercing through her. "It's too late for them. But it's not too late for you." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as his words sank in. What did he mean by that? Was there something more going on that they weren't aware of? "We're here to finish what you started," Cade continued. "You wanted to survive, to fight back. Now we're going to show the galaxy exactly what humanity is capable of." Sarah exchanged a look with Rook. They had expected help, but nothing like this. These were warriors, legends, and now they were standing before them, offering something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined, a chance to take on the universe itself. The tension in the air was palpable as Cade's team moved forward, taking their positions around the survivors. It was clear that this wasn't just a rescue mission, it was a statement. The Outcasts had come to join the fight, to prove that humanity was unstoppable, that they could stand against any force in the galaxy. As Cade surveyed the survivors, his gaze softened just for a moment, as if he recognized something in them, something that made him believe that they, too, could become legends. "We'll teach you what we know," Cade said, his voice steady. "But be ready. The galaxy won't take kindly to what we're about to do." With that, the survivors and their unexpected allies, humans and outcasts alike, prepared for the coming battle. The universe had turned its back on them, but they would show it that humanity was not to be underestimated. They had been pushed to the edge, and now they would push back. Together, the gathering storm. The survivors had barely begun to adjust to the overwhelming presence of Cade and his team when the first sign of trouble appeared on the horizon. The sky, which had been a calm and muted gray, suddenly crackled with energy. Static in the air made the hairs on Sarah's neck stand on end as she glanced at the darkening clouds. It was as though the very atmosphere was alive with tension, as if the universe itself had sensed the shift that was taking place. Cade stood at the edge of their makeshift camp, his sharp eyes scanning the sky. His team moved quietly around him, setting up defensive positions with the precision of seasoned warriors. Rook, ever vigilant, stood beside Sarah, his gaze locked on the horizon as well. "What's happening?" Sarah whispered, barely daring to speak aloud. "Trouble," Cade replied, his voice low, but laden with certainty. "The galaxy doesn't like the idea of humans, and their outcast allies, united. They'll come for us soon enough." The weight of his words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had hoped for a moment of peace, a brief respite where they could strategize. But she knew better. With the arrival of Cade and his legendary warriors, it had only been a matter of time before they would attract the attention of the galaxy's powerful factions. Rook moved closer to Sarah, his hand brushing against her arm. "They're coming, aren't they?" "Yes," Cade answered for him, turning to face them with a cold resolve. "And we need to be ready. But there's something else you should know. These forces are unlike anything you've faced before. The gravity of Cade's words settled heavily over them. The tension in the air seemed to thicken as a distant rumble echoed in the distance. Cade's warriors moved with the fluidity of experts, setting up energy shields and weapons, preparing for an assault. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows, an alien unlike any they had seen before. Its pale, slick skin gleamed like polished stone, and its eyes burned with a fiery intensity. This was no ordinary being. It was a leader, and it had come to make a statement. The alien leader stepped forward, its voice like the grinding of stone. "You think you can challenge the might of the galaxy with these outcasts?" It sneered, its words dripping with contempt. Cade stepped forward, his eyes locked on the aliens, his stance unwavering. "The galaxy abandoned us," he said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "We will make our own path." The alien let out a low growl, a sound of amusement more than threat. "You are nothing, a speck in the vastness of the universe. You will be wiped out just as easily as you were forgotten." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground, her mind racing. This alien wasn't just here to intimidate. It was here to destroy everything they had worked for. "Enough talking," Cade said, his voice colder now. He gestured to his team, and they moved into position with practiced ease. "It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." The first blast of energy tore through the air, sending a shockwave across the camp. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the fight began. Sarah, momentarily stunned by the sudden intensity of the battle, snapped into action. She ducked behind a nearby boulder as laser fire lit up the sky. The air around them buzzed with energy, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to quake with the force of each explosion. Through the chaos, she saw Cade and his warriors moving with deadly efficiency. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were sending a message. Each blow they struck, each alien they took down, was a testament to their unyielding will. "Stay low," Rook shouted as he grabbed her arm, pulling her into cover. "This isn't just a fight for survival. It's a fight for the future. We need to show them that humanity will not bend, not even under the weight of the galaxy itself." Sarah nodded, her pulse racing as she watched the battle unfold. The outcasts had proven their strength, but now it was time for humanity to prove its worth. They were fighting not just for survival, but for a place in the universe, a place where they would not be ignored, where they would not be forgotten. The fight raged on for what seemed like hours. Cade and his team moved like shadows, striking fast and disappearing before their enemies had a chance to retaliate. Every blast, every shot fired, seemed to carry the weight of a promise. Humanity was no longer a forgotten race, a species destined to be trampled by the galaxy's powers. As the last of the alien forces retreated, leaving behind only smoke and debris, Sarah felt a surge of triumph. They had done it. They had sent a message. But she knew this was only the beginning. The universe had seen what humanity could do, but now, the real test was just beginning. Cade stepped forward, his eyes scanning the battlefield, and turned to the survivors. "This is only the first wave," he said, his voice steady and filled with grim certainty. "There's more to come, but we will stand our ground. The universe may have turned its back on us, but we will make them regret it." As Cade's words echoed through the air, Sarah felt a new sense of purpose rise within her. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to change the galaxy's perception of humanity. They were fighting to show that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. And no matter what came next, they would not back down. They would rise to the challenge, side by side with their allies. The outcasts, the warriors, the legends. The galaxy would learn their names, the echo of humanity's might. The battle had barely ended when the distant sound of approaching ships could be heard. The survivors, still catching their breath and tending to their wounds, exchanged anxious glances. The storm was not over. No, this was just the beginning. Cade stood among his team, His arms folded across his chest as the alien ships drew closer. His warriors, hardened by years of combat, were already preparing for the next wave. Sarah could see the fire in their eyes, the resolve that had carried them through countless battles. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to show the universe that humanity would not, be ignored. "We're not finished yet," Cade said, his voice cold but resolute. "They've seen what we're capable of, but now we need to show them that we won't stop. Not until we've claimed our place in the galaxy." Rook, who had been silently observing the advancing ships, spoke up. "They won't come alone. The galaxy won't let us go so easily. They'll send everything they have to put us down." Cade nodded in agreement. "And we'll be ready." As the alien ships grew nearer, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had never faced an enemy like this before. The firepower they wielded was overwhelming, and their numbers seemed endless. But there was something else, too. There was a presence in the air, an oppressive weight that seemed to hang over them. The universe, once indifferent to humanity's existence, was now watching them closely. And it was no longer the universe that would dictate their fate. It was humanity itself. "Sarah," Cade called, his voice breaking her from her thoughts. "Get to the command center. I need you to help coordinate the defense. We'll need every advantage we can get." She nodded, her pulse quickening. It was time to act. The stakes had never been higher. As she sprinted toward the command center, her mind raced. The galaxy had underestimated them, thought them weak, insignificant. But now, humanity had a chance to change that perception. This was their moment, their time to prove that they were not just survivors, but warriors, legends in the making. Inside the command center, she quickly joined the team, working to deploy shields and energy weapons to protect the camp. The ground rumbled beneath them as the ships closed in, and the air was thick with tension. The sound of alien voices, distorted and harsh, crackled over the comms. They were preparing for something big, and the humans and their outcast allies would be at the heart of it. "We've got to hold them off," Sarah said, her voice tight with determination. "They'll keep coming. We need to show them that humanity isn't a race to be discarded. We will fight, and we will win." Cade stood beside her, his eyes scanning the incoming enemy forces. His warriors moved into position, their faces grim but resolute. "Prepare for the worst. We can't afford to lose this fight." The first wave of enemy ships descended from the sky, their dark forms silhouetted against the blood-red clouds. The universe had not expected humanity to rise up and fight. It had expected them to fall, to be wiped away like so many other species before them. But humanity was different. The Deathworlders, the Outcasts, and now even the humans themselves. Together, they were a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. With a loud roar, the first blast of energy hit the shields surrounding their camp. The impact shook the ground, sending tremors through the air. Sarah stumbled but regained her balance, her heart pounding in her chest. The fight had begun. From the command center, she watched as the first shots of energy fire streaked through the air, lighting up the sky in a kaleidoscope of colors. Cade's team moved like ghosts, their movements fluid and precise as they engaged the enemy forces. Explosions rocked the landscape as alien ships fell from the sky, their hulls bursting in showers of sparks. But the enemy wasn't giving up. More ships followed, and their weapons were more powerful than anything the humans had faced before. They were relentless, bombarding the shields with wave after wave of laser fire. The air around them was charged with the sound of blasts, and the ground beneath them shook with the force of the explosions. "Status update." Cade's voice rang through the comms. "Shields holding, but barely." Sarah called out, "We need more power. We can't afford to lose them now." "Understood," Cade responded. "Hold them off. We need to take down their command ship. It's the only way to end this." Sarah's pulse raced. The stakes had just been raised. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for a chance to secure their future in the galaxy. This wasn't just about defense. It was about taking the fight to the enemy. As the alien ships circled above them, preparing for another assault, Sarah's mind raced. Humanity had nothing left to lose. They had been forgotten, cast aside by the galaxy's powers. But now, they were showing the universe just what they were made of. They were proving that they were not just warriors, they were legends. And as the battle raged on, Sarah knew one thing for certain. The universe would never forget humanity again. The final stand. The air was thick with smoke and the distant echo of explosions as Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. The once pristine sky was now filled with dark clouds and the debris of fallen alien ships. Their shields were buckling under the relentless assault, but they held firm, a testament to the human will to survive. Still, the odds were stacked against them, and the true scale of the enemy's power was becoming painfully clear. Inside the command center, the team was scrambling to keep up with the overwhelming forces. Their weapon systems were running low on power, and the shields were barely holding together after hours of continuous fire. The alien fleet had unleashed everything they had. And still, humanity stood strong, refusing to bow down. Cade paced back and forth in front of the large holographic map. The lights flickered, and Sarah could see the exhaustion etched into the faces of everyone in the room. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was the defining moment that would determine whether humanity would be erased from the galaxy's memory or rise to claim its rightful place among the stars. "They're getting closer," Rook said, his voice tight with urgency. "We can't keep this up much longer." Cade's jaw tightened. "We don't need to last longer. We need to hit them where it hurts. We take down their command ship, and the rest will fall apart." The plan was simple, but it was their only chance. The command ship, the flagship of the alien forces, had been circling their position like a vulture, waiting for the right moment to strike. It was heavily shielded and well-armed, but it was also the key to ending the battle. If they could destroy the command ship, the enemy's forces would lose coordination and fall into chaos. "We have one shot at this," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "We make it count." "We don't have a choice," Cade replied, his gaze unwavering. "Prepare the team. We're going in." The team quickly geared up, strapping on their armor and checking their weapons. Each one of them knew the risk. They were about to engage the heart of the alien invasion. The success of this mission meant the survival of not just Earth, but the future of humanity. If they failed, the alien forces would crush them, and their legacy would be lost forever. With the command ship locked into position above them, Cade led the team out into the battlefield. The ground was littered with the wreckage of fallen ships, and the air crackled with the sound of energy blasts. The aliens, however, had underestimated the resolve of the humans. Despite the odds, the humans had pushed back, taking down ships one by one, and showing the invaders that they were not as weak as the galaxy had been led to believe. They advanced with precision, working together as a unit to take down the remaining enemy fighters in their path. Rook was first, his massive rifle unleashing a barrage of firepower that tore through the alien defenses, clearing a path for the rest of the team to advance. Sarah followed closely behind, her eyes scanning the battlefield, constantly on the lookout for any sign of the enemy. The closer they got to the command ship, the more intense the fighting became. The alien forces were no longer trying to overwhelm them with numbers. They were desperate, throwing everything they had at the humans in a final attempt to halt their progress. Cade's voice rang out over the comms. "Stay focused. We take that ship down, or we die trying." The command ship loomed ahead, a towering presence in the sky. It was massive, its sleek metallic surface glinting as it turned its weapons on the approaching team. The massive energy cannons fired, narrowly missing Cade and his team as they dove for cover. The ground beneath them trembled with the force of the blasts. But they didn't flinch. They moved as one, pushing forward relentlessly. Every step was a battle. Every breath was a struggle. But they didn't stop. The fire in their eyes, the drive to protect their home and their future, burned brighter than any enemy's weapon. Finally, they'd reached the base of the command ship, and Cade gave the order to split up. The team scattered, each taking a different route, to plant explosives on key parts of the ship's defenses. Sarah, her heart racing, ran to the side of the massive vessel, planting her charges with precision. Each second felt like an eternity, and every explosion in the distance only heightened the tension. She heard Cade's voice again. "On my mark, we set them off. Get ready." The final step, the one that would either turn the tide of the battle or doom them all. Sarah crouched low, peering around the corner of the ship to make sure no enemies were approaching. The air was filled with the deafening sounds of gunfire, the crackling of energy blasts, and the thunderous impact of explosions. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Cade's voice was calm, but there was an edge of finality to it. 3, 2, 1, now. With a massive roar, the charges detonated. The command ship shook violently, its hull groaning as the powerful explosives tore through its core. The explosion was like nothing Sarah had ever witnessed. The shockwave knocked her off her feet, and the world around her seemed to blur for a moment. But when the dust cleared, the command ship was no more. It had been reduced to a glowing mass of debris, the remains of the once dominant alien force now scattered across the battlefield. And with the destruction of their command ship, the remaining alien forces faltered. Their coordination shattered. The humans, joined by their outcast allies, pressed forward, pushing the invaders back with all the strength and fury they had left. It was over. The battle had been won. As Sarah stood amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily, she looked to the skies. The universe had seen humanity at its most fierce, no longer just a race to be ignored. Humanity had proven its place in the stars. They had fought, not just for their survival, but for their legacy. And now, the galaxy would never forget the might of humanity, the legacy etched in the stars. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. The surviving alien ships had retreated, and the debris of their fleet littered the once clear skies above Earth. Humanity's victory had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, a message that could not be ignored. Cade stood at the edge of the command center, looking out over the horizon. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the Earth's surface, but there was no peace in his heart. There was only the sense of duty that had driven them all to this point. They had won, yes, but the enemy was still out there, somewhere, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The quiet hum of machinery filled the background as the rest of the team gathered around him, exhaustion etched on every face. The weight of the victory didn't seem to ease their burden. They knew the cost. So many lives had been lost. Entire cities lay in ruin. And yet they had prevailed, their strength and unity unshaken by the horrors they'd faced. Sarah was the first to speak, her voice steady, but heavy with the weight of everything they had endured. "We did it. We stopped them." Cade nodded, but his eyes remained distant. "Yes, but they will come again. And when they do, we'll be ready. This is just the beginning." The others, despite the exhaustion pulling at them, nodded in agreement. They all knew that their victory was a temporary one. The galaxy was vast, and they had only proven that humanity would not fall easily. But there was still so much more to do, so much more to fight for. "We've earned a moment of rest," Rook said, his deep voice carrying a weight of its own. "But we can't let our guard down. Not yet." The crew stood in silence for a moment, letting the gravity of the situation settle in. There was no time to celebrate. They had won this battle, but many more would come. And each one would test humanity's resolve even further. "We'll rebuild," Cade said, turning back to face his team. "And when we do, we'll be stronger than ever. The universe will never forget who we are. We'll make sure of that." They had fought for their survival, for their families, and for the future of Earth. But the true legacy of humanity's triumph wasn't just in the lives saved or the battles won. It was in the strength of the human spirit, a force that no alien could ever comprehend. And as the stars twinkled in the sky above them, humanity stood united, unbroken, and ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. They had seen the fierce power of humans and the lengths they would go to protect their own. But the universe had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, their unyielding will to survive. No matter what challenges the galaxy threw at them, humanity would face it head-on, never backing down, never forgetting their place in the cosmos. The war was over for now, but the legacy of humanity's bravery would echo through the stars for generations to come, a reminder that when humanity stood united, nothing could stand in their way. And the universe would never again underestimate the might of the human spirit. As Cade watched the sun dip below the horizon, he knew that humanity's journey had just begun. The universe had been put on notice, and the story of humanity was far from finished. It was only the beginning.